Okay, so let's talk about the Tengu. You know the one. Long nose, fierce expression. It's got to be one of Japan's most famous supernatural spirits. But the creature you think you know, that's really just the final chapter in a long, strange, and absolutely fascinating story of cultural collision. Let's dig into how it all really began.
Yeah, you've seen this face everywhere, haven't you? On masks, in anime, maybe even at a temple. It's a total icon. But the story behind that famous nose is probably not what you're thinking. It's actually the result of a centuries-long evolution.
And get this, the origin of this uniquely Japanese creature isn't really Japanese at all. And it has nothing to do with a nose or even a bird. It all begins with a celestial dog.
So, to really get this, our story doesn't start in the mountains of Japan. Nope. We're going back to the skies of our ancient China, with a cosmic creature that sparked one heck of a legendary transformation.
The name itself is the very first clue. Those characters for Tengu, well, in Chinese, they're pronounced Tiangu, and they mean quite literally, heavenly dog. Japan pretty much just imported the name directly.
Now here's where it gets really interesting, because the story immediately splits. Over in China, the Tiangu was a very specific thing, this vicious dog-like demon they blamed for stuff like eclipses and meteors. But when that idea lands in Japan, way back in a chronicle from 720 AD, they kept the name, but the form got fuzzy. It was linked to strange lights in the sky, sometimes a heavenly dog, and sometimes even a heavenly fox.
And this is the first big ingredient in our myth mashup. You have this idea of a monster from the sky, and it just collides head-on with Japan's own ancient native beliefs in powerful spirits, or kami, that live in the mountains and forests. A whole new kind of creature was starting to take shape.
Okay, so we've got this cosmic dog concept. Let's see how it completely sheds its skin, or fur, I guess, and becomes the first truly Japanese version of the Tengu, taking to the air.
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How in the world do you get from a celestial dog demon to a creature with wings and a beak? Well, it involves adding another layer of culture to the mix, and a total reinvention of what this creature was all about.
We'll say hello to the Karasu Tengu, the Crow Tengu. This was Japan's first real version of this creature. And forget anything human-like. These things were bird-like monsters. We see them in scrolls from the 12th and 13th centuries, and they're portrayed as these chaotic spirits of the wilderness, mischievous, sometimes just plain evil, with sharp beaks and claws. They were basically the embodiment of untamed, arrogant energy.
And the plot thickens. Because that bird-like form didn't just appear out of nowhere. We have to bring in a third culture here, India. The look was heavily influenced by Garuda, a divine, part-human, part-eagle deity from Hindu and Buddhist mythology. As Buddhism made its way to Japan, the image of Garuda helped shape and solidify the Tengu's new bird form.
But wait, the story is far from over. In fact, the most famous part of the Tengu, the thing we all recognize, was still to come, as the creature slowly started to look more and more human.
And look, this change wasn't like flipping a switch. You can see from this timeline, it was a super gradual process that took hundreds of years. Starting around the 14th century, artists and storytellers began to kind of humanize that bird's beak, slowly stretching it out into a nose. By the 17th century, the long-nosed Dai Tengu, or Greater Tengu, was the main image, and it was seen as the boss of the older bird-like Karasu Tengu.
You know, this wasn't just a simple costume change. It was a huge leap in symbolism. The beak, which is a weapon for a bird of prey, morphs into this crazy long human nose. And that new feature held onto that original idea of arrogance, twisting it into a new symbol of massive human pride and conceit.
And this is so cool. That nose became so iconic that it literally embedded itself into the Japanese language. Even today, if someone is being boastful or arrogant, you can say they are Tengu ni naru. They're becoming a Tengu. That long nose became a permanent metaphor for pride.
So, as the Tengu is getting this physical makeover, its whole role in folklore starts getting way more complex. It's not just some simple monster anymore. It's something far more ambiguous.
And this is the great paradox of the Tengu. In the early stories from like the 12th century, they were the enemies of faith, tricking and kidnapping Buddhist monks, total menaces. But over time, the script completely flips. They started being seen as these powerful guardians of their sacred mountains, sometimes even worshipped as minor gods or kami themselves.
A huge reason for that change in reputation was its connection to the Yamabushi.
These were real-life ascetic monks who trained deep in the mountains. The Tengu's image basically adopted the Yamabushi's whole look, like that little black token hat and the Haochiwa feather fan. This visual link really cemented their status as powerful, mystical beings of the mountains, part monk, part demon.
And all of this leads us to the final, and maybe the most legendary role the Tengu ever took on. Not just a mountain spirit, but a master of the sword. I mean, this is one of the all-time great Japanese legends, from texts like the Heike Monogatari. The story goes that the historical hero, Minamono no Yoshitsune, learned his incredible swordsmanship as a boy from none other than Sojobo, the king of the Tengu on Mount Kurama. This totally elevated the Tengu from a mere trickster to a wise, but still very dangerous mentor.
So they ended up as these just fascinatingly complex figures. They hold all this incredible power and wisdom, but at the same time, they're the poster child for arrogant martial pride. They're masters, for sure, but they never lost that core arrogance that they'd had from the very beginning.
So think about that journey. From a Chinese star omen, to a bird demon inspired by an Indian deity, to a prideful mountain monk and master swordsman, the Tengu is the ultimate myth mashup. It just goes to show you that myths are rarely born whole. They're pieced together, they're borrowed, and they're remade over centuries, until they become something entirely new and unforgettable.